Gamification in Education, a presentation by Drew Small. Quick outline to get us started. First, we're going to tackle the purpose of research. We're going to investigate what is gamification. We're going to view the benefits of gamification. We're going to look at the teacher viewpoint on gamification and their familiarity. We're going to identify trends through Minecraft and MMORPG games. We're going to see the potential drawbacks. Finally, we're going to conclude, and then there's a list of references at the very end of this presentation. First, the purpose. The purpose of this presentation is to better understand gamification by investigating the benefits of gamification and current trends that are being utilized to help students learn. To get started, we have to understand what is gamification. Gamification is the use of gaming methods in a non-game context. To give you a better understanding of this, we can look at business. Gamification has had success in the context of business and is now starting a trend towards education. If we look at websites like Yelp and looking at the Starbucks rewards and possibly even Foursquare, all of these three businesses use gamification to incentivize customer behavior. Yelp gives badges and rewards for people that write reviews for restaurants. Same thing as Foursquare. When you check into a location, a restaurant, you can actually become the mayor, which means that you've checked in more than anybody else. TripAdvisor actually tells you if you're in the top X% of reviewers in the area. So again, just incentivizing you, giving that user-generated content to make that website function. Starbucks Rewards is a little bit of a different conception or a little bit of a different incentive to consume the product. You gain stars, you gain points to get free products down the road. But all three of these things are examples of gamification within business. So what we look to is add that same component, the leaderboards, badges, and points as units of measurements inside the classroom to incentivize students to perform better and possibly learn more inside the classroom. As we look at the benefits of gamification, the first being motivation. First, gamification creates challenges. These are clear set goals for students that are involved or related to the learning outcomes or the performance objectives. The feeling of achievement. The student, when they overcome these goals and they reach that goal, they have that sense of achievement of doing something and having that tangible, whether it's a leaderboard, whether it's a badge to show off to their peers, or if it's a certain number of points, they have that instant feedback. Unlike a graded assignment, a paper assignment, they have to wait for that to come back to get that feedback, but with gamification, they can get that instant gratification. Instant motivation or increased motivation outside the classroom. One of the studies actually had students get involved in extracurricular activities. These extracurricular activities would actually give them points and end up giving them badges that they could show to their peers. So it involved students, or got students to get involved outside the classroom. And the students found that if they weren't involved in the gamification, they would have not got involved outside the classroom. So again, it was an incentive to go out and get motivated to or participate in extracurricular activities. Found that these were more intrinsic rather than intrinsic motivation factors. If we look at the intrinsic, that's more of the self-drive to portray that positive image and to achieve and conquer those challenges. 90.5% of the students in one study said that they were intrinsically motivated by gamification. This is compared to 30.5% that were intrinsically motivated after performing the didactic pedagogy that has been traditionally given out for students. So we can see in that study that it was drastically more that students were intrinsically motivated by gamification. Next, if we look at self-efficacy, students' self-efficacy increased after participating in gamification study. This was an example where students were put into a control and then also an experimental group. At the end, they did an interview, and along with motivation, which a lot of the studies focused on motivation, they're looking at self-efficacy and looking at the aptitude of the student after completing the curriculum. And it showed that 90.3 of the experimental group thought as though that they could accomplish any of the tasks in the exercise. Meanwhile, only 28.5 of the control group stated this. This shows us that students that participate in the gamification felt better suited to complete all the objectives in the exercise again. So they could go back and retain that knowledge and perform everything that they needed to perform within that module. Meanwhile, just below 30% of the control group felt as though that they could go back and do the same thing. The students were also asked, could you teach this module or could you teach this lesson to students after completing the gamification? And the students that were in the experimental group, the one exposed to gamification, overwhelmingly said that they were able to go, or they feel as though they could go and teach this subject to another student. So this shows that students not only gain confidence, aptitude in that area, but they really retain that information, so much so that they could actually teach if they needed to for one of their peers. More benefits of gamification. One is the increased desire to learn. Familiarity with gaming breaks down barriers within the classroom. So this generation, Generation Z, is the app era. They need information at the snap of a finger. They grew up with everything with the term, there's an app for that. So they need that instant gratification. And they're very familiar with technology. So introducing gaming into the classroom is nothing that's foreign to them. They've grown up gaming, whether it's on a console or if it's on their iPhone or Android device. They've grown up with the gaming concept. Many studies noted that gamification within education made it more fun. A lot of students during the surveys and the qualitative the data that was collected said that gamification just made the classroom a little bit more fun and incentivized them to actually participate within the classroom. Problem-solving skills is another component of gamification that we saw as a benefit. The ability to apply real-world concepts to virtual simulations. Being able to relate course material to external scenarios. This is when we think of simulations or models. This is something that I have personal experience with being a business student here at Bowling Green State University during my undergraduate years. We were able to utilize these simulations that portrayed certain models that we could make real-life decisions and see how that impacted the end result. So a lot of cause and effect that goes into gamification, that you can actually create real-world models, and have students manipulate those variables and see the cause and effect. Teacher viewpoint on gamification. Now, personally, I have no background as an educator. I graduated 2 years ago. I work in the education industry, but it's more the higher education admissions world. But I found that this was a very important topic to cover because I want to know what teachers think of gamification and technology in the classroom. So these three authors did a survey where teachers were asked about gamification within their curriculum and the learning environment. 85 of the respondents noted that gamification would increase student learning. 62% of respondents said that gamification would increase motivation. 85% of recipients said that adding gamification into the curriculum would not impact the behavior of the students. This was something that I found very interesting. This always brings me to the field trip mentality or the party mentality. When you're in grade school, you're doing a field trip or you have a party that day, I always felt that things were always a little bit chaotic, and that's one thing that I was really interested in is, does the implementation of games inside the classroom impact the overall behavior of the students? And it was actually really surprising to me that the respondents said that adding the gamification would not impact the behavior of the students within. So just because it was a little bit more informal way of curriculum does not mean that the students are going to act up in any capacity. 96% of the respondents said that technology was already integrated in the curriculum. I feel like this is a huge hurdle that a lot of teachers will say is that they just don't have access to technology. But with the increase of iPads inside the classroom, I actually know a few high schools that give all their students MacBook Pros. So with the increase of technology, gamification is definitely feasible since more and more students are getting access to technology, maybe not through the home, but through the school. Then lastly, 39% did not know how to properly add games into their curriculum. But the vast majority said that they'd be willing to better learn how to do this. So I think this shows that teachers, if they don't know how to add gamification within their curriculum, they're receptive to the idea. They've seen the studies, they have heard from their peers that gamification can really have some great positives inside the classroom, and they're looking to learn a little bit more. So there is potential for growth inside the teacher realm. Trends. First, we're going to look at Minecraft. This is an open-ended sandbox. If you're familiar, there's actually 3 different methods. The one that is most used in education is going to be the creative mode. This is free reign. This is completely a blank slate. That is why they use that sandbox analogy, is that it is totally up to the user on what they want to do with this environment. Students use resources and materials to build buildings, create structure, help students explore STEM-related fields. This is a note that was really important in the article that I read, especially for female students, since females are dominated by males in the STEM-related fields. This would give female students the chance to explore STEM-related fields at a very early age. It allows exploration of more complex topics. During the survey of this study, students were talking about buying and trading resources and knowing the value of the resources if they had some, but another student or another person did not have those resources, and just the trading and the bartering aspect. Now, as a former business student, this made me think of the stock market, and a really great opportunity for students to kind of get that experience in the stock market without having to go through and going into the complex and diving right down into the topic. So that was really exciting for me to see the exploration of more complex topics of the students without them actually really knowing and making those connections down the road when it's time to learn those complex topics. Add social element to gamification, as we'll talk about in the next slide. The gamification can definitely hold students back when it comes to the social aspect, but since Minecraft is a open environment that invites other students or other individuals to join your environment, you can have that social that interaction. You can show off your buildings and your structures and be proud of your structures and utilize those other participants to trade resources. Taps in the students' creativity. This is something that I feel like that a lot of schools struggle with, a lot of teachers struggle with, is showing students that they are creative. I think that a lot of students fall into the pitfall that they have to do a certain thing that shows that they're creative, that is proof that they're creative because other creative students do that. But with Minecraft being such a sandbox environment, anything that the student does is creative and allows them to explore that creativity. The next trend is the massively multiplayer online role-playing games, or for short, MMORPG. Again, like Minecraft, this is a serious game. There are 2 categories, gamification and serious games. Gamification are the leaderboards, the badges, the points, a little bit more of the simplistic motivation or the simplistic frame of motivation that gets students kind of competing against one another. But serious games take it a little bit step further. There's avatars, there's social interactions. It plays a lot like the traditional console game that you would think of when you think of games. MMORPGs are actually very interesting because they're a little bit more story-based, and with games, they're very culturally different. They're also very different when it comes to genders, and females actually respond more to a story-based game. So if we're looking at being a little bit more inclusive and involving more parties into this gamification method, I feel that MMORPGs are a fantastic way to do that, since it lends itself a little bit more towards the female and male genders. Allows for more of a social component versus other gamification methods just like Minecraft. One really interesting case study that was performed on MMORPGs inside the classroom was English speaking courses, or learning to use English. It was used in an Asian country to help students speak English. And what was very interesting, in a culture that really struggles against public humiliation, MMORPGs gave students the chance to have an avatar. and walk around inside this environment and practice their English. Now, if they were humiliated and spoke something wrong, it wasn't personally themselves that was getting humiliated, it was their avatar. So that was kind of mitigated by the video game. And they actually saw that mentorship or mentors were still being made within the environment. So it really had a social compact. So students not only were able to learn without the pressure of their peers making fun of them, and for them being teased for not properly speaking English, but they were also exposed to mentors that they could go and meet in locations and practice their English. So it really, really got students involved in wanting to learn English and really helped with that process. Potential drawbacks. Gamification was found to negatively impact some areas of student development. In one study, gamification did overwhelming things when it came to practical tasks, but when it came to writing, students actually did worse that were exposed to gamification. So finding a blended program, not jumping everything into a gamification model, but figuring out what would be the right thing to gamify. If games are too complex, the toll of understanding the game can cause students to give up. One of the studies identified this as cognitive load. Basically, if students are frustrated and don't understand what they're supposed to be learning in the gamification, that's where a lot of the negative feedback came in the studies, is when students felt overwhelmed. Then the social aspect of education declines. Like I said in the two trends, Minecraft and the MMORPGs, we're seeing more and more social aspect or more and more social involvement into our games within education. But more simplistic gamification models can somewhat limit the social interaction between peers. So keeping that in your mind and making sure that you do that is something that you want to do if you're implementing this. Conclusion, the entire curriculum cannot be gamified. Like I alluded to earlier, there should be a blended program. It should be a happy medium, so students are being exposed to the traditional pedagogy, but also maybe something that's tailored a little bit more towards the generation. Cognitive load needs to be considered. Again, not making things too complex for the student. Information needs to be available. Students and faculty members need to know the simulation, the gamification, whatever is being implemented into the curriculum backwards and forwards to properly use this model. Buy-in from faculty and educators. A lot of the negative feedback from students was that not all teachers were using the gamification methods the same way. There's a lot of variety between classes, so making sure that it's a consistent model that's understood by both the student and the faculty member. That concludes this presentation. As we look here are my list of references and then page 2 of my reference list. I would like to thank you for sitting down and chatting with me. And if you have any questions, please ask those on the discussion board post below.